Good morning learners, welcome to Bravo Easy to Speak English course. The subject we are going to be looking at today, it's called reported speech. So there's two categories of reported speech. One is direct speech, the other one is indirect speech. Now direct speech is saying exactly what someone has said to you. You can't do no alteration to it and it's always done within the quotation. And indirect speech is saying the content from the first person's point of view. There's no quotes needed at all because it's a speech which is indirect and you're saying it. So it's more kind of a statement. But here it's a speech which is direct and you're saying it within the inverted commas so that it's what they have said exactly directly with no alterations whatsoever. So I have a small example here. We are going to look at lots more examples, but just an immediate one for you to understand the difference between them. It's the quotation mark starts. It says, I am going to the cinema. He said. So this is a statement that he has said, but this is how he put it. I'm going to the cinema within the inverted commas. So you cannot do the alteration when you're trying to write about it. You have to say exactly what he has said. And here indirectly, the whole thing will change indirect speech as he said that he was going to the cinema. So if you have to write this as a direct way, you'll be writing like this. If you're changing it to an indirect speech when you're writing about it, you would say he said because it is he who said. But he said that he was going to the cinema. So here you will say that he said that he was going to the cinema as indirectly. And directly you will say he said that I am going to the cinema. So you can see where the changes happens is on the tense, verb and preposition that will change on direct speech to indirect speech. Now we are going to go and look at some more examples of both of them so you can understand how to apply them. Okay, so we looked at what is a direct speech and indirect speech, and I gave you a description of what is a direct speech and when it's used, and what is an indirect speech and how it's used. Now we are going to look at about 7 examples of these types of speeches, which is going to be a little bit more confusing, but just watch it very carefully, then it's quite simplified. So the first one is called present simple. So you have the meaning within here, present, it's happening now. And is simple. So it's a very simple statement which is being spoken now, present. Now how that will be spoken as past simple in an indirect speech. So we are looking at 2 factors here. One is direct speech spoken presently, indirect speech spoken in past tense. So here the example is she said it is cold. So that means she is saying it is cold now. And because it's a direct speech, remember I told you it has to come within the quotation. Now when this changes into indirect speech, it will become she said it was cold. So the it is has become it was. Okay, because it's past tense. So that's a past simple and there won't be no quotation because it's an indirect speech. There will be quotation if it is a direct speech. So this is one of the categories is called present simple. The next one is present continuous. So we are doing something presently and we are doing it continuously. So it's happening. Not it happened, it's happening. Okay, so it's happening. So here it will become she said I am teaching English online. So that means she's teaching English online. So it's a continuous procedure, but she's doing it now. So it is I am teaching English online, which is present continuous. Now the sentence changes into past continuous, will be said she said that she was teaching English online. So you can see the I am has become she was because we are say when she's saying it herself, it will be I am because I'm saying it myself, I am. The moment somebody is saying what I have said will have to change. So I will become she because I am a feminine. And if it's a he, it's a he, then it will become a he or them, whatever whatever the group that they come into. Okay, so she said that she was teaching English online. So you have seen the present continuous has become the past continuous. The teaching has not changed because it's continuous. So it's happening, but it's happening yesterday, it's happening now, or it's happening before, or it's happening now. So that's how it becomes. Now the C category is present perfect continuous. You might be thinking just like how I thought, why is English so complicated? But that's how it's been made. That language has not been made that simple. But if you understood it, it's just like mathematics, it's a very difficult subject, but if you got it, you got it. If you haven't, you'll never have it. So like that, if you understand it when you are learning it properly the first time, then it's quite simple. It looks complicated. So here, present perfect continuous. So there's a difference between present continuous and present perfect continuous. Now see the example, okay? It's a very same example that's been given a little bit differently. She said, so nothing has changed here. I am teaching has become I have been teaching English for 7 years. Here I am teaching English online. So end of the day, she is doing teaching. The teaching has not changed. But here the teaching has been happening for 7 years. So there is a time scale there. So she is specifically saying the time, the period that she is teaching the language. Here she is only teaching the language online where she is teaching. So that is how it becomes a perfect continuous. So here I have been teaching English for 7 years. Now the same thing will become the indirect speech past perfect continuous. So the present perfect will change to past perfect continuous. She said, so nothing has changed here, that she had been teaching English for 7 years. Here, because it's happening, I have been. Here it's happened, or we are saying something that is happening in the past perfect continuous tense. So we have to say that she had been teaching English for 7 years. Now there's 4 more examples on the subcategories which I'm going to be looking at it, which is past simple, past continuous, past perfect and past perfect continuous, which is happening in direct speech. Because you'll be thinking, that is exactly the same I've written here. So what is the difference I'm going to tell you? Here it becomes a past from the direct to the indirect. But here we are going to talk about the past simple in direct form, and this itself will change to indirect. So the past simple, past continuous, past perfect and the past perfect continuous in the direct speech, how that will change to indirect speech is what we are going to be looking at it. Okay, we are going to continue the last 4 examples of the direct and indirect speech with the past simple, past perfect. So here the past simple, we have seen the present simple in direct speech, past simple in direct speech. Here the past simple becomes a direct speech and it changes to past perfect when it becomes a indirect speech. So she said, I taught online yesterday. So you know that in direct speech it will always be on the quotation. So she said, I taught online yesterday. Now this will change to, she said that she had taught online yesterday. So the past simple has become the past perfect with the past tense on here, but it's not the present tense, it's a past tense, but still it changes to I taught online yesterday has become she said that she had taught online yesterday. The next one, past continuous. We saw the present continuous that changed to past continuous before. Now here the past continuous will change to past perfect continuous. So she said, I was teaching earlier. Now when it changes to past perfect continuous, she said she had been teaching earlier. So you know where it's changing. The I was will become she had, because I was will be the past continuous in the direct form. But the same thing indirectly, it will be she had, because it's a she who said. So obviously she said she had. So the I was will become she had here. And here also same, I taught online yesterday, she said. Here she said that she had taught. The next one, past perfect. She said the lesson had already started when he arrived. So she said the lesson had already started when he arrived. Now that will become the past perfect. She said that the lesson had already started when he arrived. So it's not a big change. You can see she said the lesson had already started. So that's a statement that she is saying in a direct speech form with the quotation. Here when we have to change that, it will be she said that the lesson had already started when he arrived. Okay, so it just will be the lesson, that will show the changes from direct to indirect. Here the last one is past perfect continuous. I've run out of space to write it, so it's actually the same sentence, will repeat just with one word changes. Past perfect continuous. She said, I had already been teaching for 5 minutes. So here is the direct speech will be I had, she said, I had already been teaching for 5 minutes. Now when you are changing that to past perfect continuous in indirect speech, you will say she said she had already been teaching for 5 minutes. So the I has become she. So this is what the 7 parts of the direct speech that changes to indirect speech. Okay, so we've seen the 7 parts of direct speeches that changes into indirect speech. Now we are going to go into a little bit more simpler how the verb changes into from direct speech to indirect speech. Okay, we are going to go to another exercise where the verb changes or the tense and the verb changes in direct speech and indirect speech. So when the speech changes from direct to indirect, it's usually either the verb is changing or the tense is changing, or if not, both are changing. So here let's just take 5 examples of the verbs will, can, must, shall and may, how they change from direct speech and to indirect speech when they are used in the sentence. The first one, she said, I will teach English online tomorrow. Now when this is a direct speech, so obviously it's within the sorry, I made a mistake here. It's within the quotation mark because it's a direct speech and it's said directly, and it's I will teach. So here how it becomes an indirect speech will be she said she would teach English online tomorrow. So the will has changed to would. From the direct speech to indirect, the tense has changed. So in the verb, the tense has changed here. Now second example, she said, I can teach English online. So again it's a direct speech and the word is can, the verb is can, and how the can changes is she said that she could teach English online. So as an indirect speech, the can has become could and the tense has changed here. With the verb has taken the formation of the tense changing there. Third example, she said, I must have a computer to teach English online. So here again is the quotation because it's a direct speech, and the verb must has changed here to she said that she had to have a computer to teach English online. So that's how the changes has happened here with the verbs, and the tense has changed. So direct speech has become indirect speech with the simple word verb, how they change. And we have 2 more to look at, which is shall and may. Let's move on to the 4th one, which is shall. She said, what shall we learn today? So it's becoming a question format with the quotation because it's a speech but a question speech. She said, what shall we learn today? So the moment it becomes a question, you know that there should be a question mark added to it, and then it will still be within the quotation. Now the shall has become indirect speech now. She said what we should learn today. She asked what we should learn today. So shall has become should. And because it's like here she said what shall we learn today, that's a question mark, and when the question becomes a statement, it comes in the tense asked. So she said and then she asked what we should learn today. Again the similar thing here with may. She said, may I open a new browser? So she's asking a question. So obviously question mark with the quotation, may I open a new browser? So the same thing will become indirectly she asked, because it's a direct speech becomes indirect here. She asked if she might open a new browser. So may has become might. So here you can see it's a present tense of direct speech is becoming past tense of indirect speech. Now these words can change into past tense, and when they become past tense, when they become indirect or direct, the tense won't change. So we've seen all this now, how it becomes the direct speech to the indirect speech with the tense changing here. But when it becomes a future tense and it doesn't change, and you'll see may will become might, but the might word doesn't change when you do the speech of direct to indirect. The example is, we'll go in the reverse format. The example is, I might go to the cinema, he said. So I might. So go to the cinema, he said. It's very similar examples that we are seeing. It's just the tense is changing, the verbs are changing. So here I might go. So that means, you know, he's planning to go. So it's a future tense. I might go to the cinema, he said. Same thing here, nothing changes. The might will not change. He said that he might go to the cinema. Only the speech will change from direct to indirect, but the tense doesn't change because it's still on the future tense. So let me just, I don't have the space here, so let me erase off this and we'll come in the reverse order. So we will see in the may, which becomes a might, and that doesn't change. The same thing, you know, the same thing, I can put the same words here, the sentence won't change. Shall will become should, okay, and must will stay the same, can will become could, and will become would. So these, the future tense won't change, only the speech will change. So may will become might, shall will become should, must will remain the same, can will become could, and will become would. So you would see the tense won't change, it's just the speech style will change from direct speech to indirect speech. In the reported speech, first we looked at how the speech changes with direct and indirect with 7 different subtitles of it. Then we saw how the verb changes into the direct and indirect. Now we are going to look at the time changes in a speech, in a reported speech with direct and indirect. So when you say time, you know it's the period, the time period. So the example I have a few examples, but you know, I don't have the space. So let's just start with the first one is this. And remember we spoke about it, whatever comes in between the bracket, it's an additional support. So for example here is this, can be anything. This morning, it can be this evening, this can be, you know, anything. But here is just we are using the example is evening. So this evening will become that evening, because this evening is happening now. So it's a direct speech. That evening is when somebody is saying a speech that happened in an indirect format. So it will become that evening with the time changes. Today, it's today. What would you say today as? Yesterday. In an indirect speech. So when you're writing about something or saying about something that happened today, you would say it as indirect speech. With the time changes, it will become yesterday. So it's like present tense and almost like past tense. These days, those days. So when we are saying about something, you know, that's happening these days, we have to say something that happened, it will be those days. A week ago, something that happened a week ago will become something that happened a week before. Last weekend, you're going to say something that happened last weekend. What would you say it an indirect speech with the time changes will be the previous weekend. So there's many more examples. Let me just take about 2 or 3 more, and then, you know, you can refer to it in the website, and also you can Google it with the time changes in a direct speech, indirect speech, and you'll be able to see how the speech will change with the time. So let's just continue. Here will become there with direct and indirect speech with the time changes. Next, I put week here, so you know what is next. Next week, the following week. So it's going to change with the time thing. So the next week, you'll say the following week. Tomorrow, the next day, or the following day. They're both correct. Next day or the following day. So this is how you would change the direct speech to indirect speech with the time change. So we have looked at like 3 divisions of it. First we looked at the indirect speech and the direct speech with the 7 different formats of the speeches. Then we saw how the verb changes with the direct and indirect. Now we are seeing how the time scale changes with direct and indirect speech. So this is a little mini exercise about reported speech that you have learned today, and please refer to the website of Bravo Easy to Learn English to get more and more ideas of how to change a direct to indirect speech, and practice is as much as possible. So language is practice. The more you practice, the better you become. So just don't learn it and keep it there. Practice it with people. Speak to people so that it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. How will you learn otherwise? So make a mistake. Somebody who is there in the other end will correct you. So then you know that you made a mistake. Learn about it, memorize it, write it down, or practice it with people and friends, and that's how you're going to improve the speeches. Thank you so much for watching Bravo Easy to Learn English.